Hello everybody and welcome back. In this lecture we're going to talk about our first materials. Now you may have something like this, more complex or even simpler. It doesn't really matter which model we've got, but at the moment it's a bit plain and boring. How about if we change it slightly so we have some colours? Much better straight away. Let's hop over into Blender and find out some more. Okay, so we're over in the default Blender file at the moment, and we've got a cube in front of us. Now the first thing we're going to have to do is make sure that we can see any of the material changes we make. At the moment, our view is in what's called solid mode, which means that we're not really going to be able to see any colours that we apply to our model. So how do we go and change that so we can see what's going on? Well, at the very top of the 3D view, we have our toolbar, and we've got these three spheres to the right hand side. We've got wireframe mode, solid mode, which means it's going to not have any color, look dev, and rendered. We want to be in look dev for the moment, which is the third one along. Once that's set, we're ready to make our first material. I'm going to widen this area to the right. So with our cube selected, and we know it's selected because it's got this light orange border around it, I'm going to go to the materials properties. So we're going to go over to our properties window. And if you can't see everything here, I'm just going to condense this as if you were on a smaller screen, or maybe you've moved these around. You can use the scroll wheel to go up and down on this tab system on the left hand side. I'm going to make that larger again. And if we go down nearly at the bottom, we've got this sphere. If we go ahead, hover over it, says material, click on it, it takes us to our material properties. So at the moment, this cube has a material called material assigned to it. Now you can have more than one material assigned to an object, but we're just going to stay with one for the moment. Now I can rename that material by either double clicking, as the hover over actually showed, or going down here. And I'm going to type in red here. And you can see it's updated at the top here. Now, if you've got more than one material in your scene, what you can do is use this drop down to select a different material. And that's very useful if you built up a repertoire of materials that you've stored, or you've already set the material up and you want to apply it to a new object. Right, let's go down a little further. If your use nodes is not blue, it will be turned off. For this section and most sections, we're going to have to make sure use nodes is turned on. You will then see we're using the surface shader principled BSDF. Don't worry about that, we'll cover that in much more detail later on. But that's essentially what's producing all of this detail down here. Now this is the setup of how the light is interacting with the surface of our cube. And it can get quite complex. And again, don't worry, we'll break this down later on in the course so you have a much deeper understanding. For the moment though, we just want to focus on the base colour. So go ahead and click the coloured area to the right of base colour and we can pick a different colour. In this case it's going to be a red colour because that's what we selected. So on the colour wheel I've selected a hue that's kind of reddy, and I'm going to drag the slider down on the side here so it's a darker red. Now you can select them in this way, which is RGB. We're either with hue, saturation and value as well, so we can change the hue with this slider here. The saturation is how much color there is, and the value is light and dark. And that's roughly in the middle for the moment. Not 50%, but we'll cover that later as well. Okay, so that's our material assigned. So let's go and add another object to our scene. Shift and A, adding an object in, a mesh object, UV sphere, and I'm going to press the G key and just move it over here. Now because the materials properties were selected before, we see that our sphere has been added, but it doesn't have a default property like the default cube did. So that's something to bear in mind, that things that you add don't necessarily come with a material already assigned to them. So what we can do is go to the drop down and pick red. Pretty cool, hey? Well, let's say we didn't want red. What can we do? Well, if we go ahead and rename it, let's say yellow, and then go and change the base color down here to a yellow. Both of them have changed. And that's because both of them are sharing the same material, which is really useful, but you can get caught out like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control and Z and undo both of those steps. Now notice that the moment we gave this the red material, a number 2 appeared. This number 2 shows us that 2 objects in our entire scene share that material. Now if we duplicated these objects, let's do it now. Let's draw a box around them, duplicate them. Yes, I know I've duplicated the lamp as well, but we can see that the number's now 4 items in our scene. Notice that we've now got 2 objects selected. We've got one with a light orange border and one with a dark orange border. When you're looking at the properties of something, you're looking at the properties of the one with the lighter orange border around it. So if we were to go ahead and click on this 4, it will make a single user copy. So it's taken all of the settings that we already had with that red and made a new material, in this case called red 001. Now I can call it yellow and switch out the color to something else independently of everything on here. The other thing that we can do is just create a new material. So if I select this other cube, I can delete the red material or delete the red slot, and then it will go back to this default sort of plain white color and create a new material and call it blue, whatever you want here, and come to our base color and make it blue. So there's a couple of different ways of changing around materials. Now I do want to show you one final thing before I crack on to your challenge, and that's with something a bit more complex. Let's call it complex for the moment. So I'm going to go and open up my well that I had before. Okay, so with the well opened up here that I produced in the last lecture, this is quite a complex object, and I want to show you one of the ways that you could deal with having a mistake made. Obviously, you are going to learn from this as we go, but I didn't rename or give any of these materials as I was going. They're all individual objects, so it's going to be a real pain if I have to go through, hold down shift and select multiple ones of these. So selecting multiple ones and going new material, calling it, I'm going to make a pink roof tile here to really highlight and make sure we're in look dev mode. But only one of those tiles is actually selected and only one of them has been changed to pink. All of the others are as they were before. Is there a quick way of transferring the material on one object to many others? Well, yes, there is. So I'm going to box select everything because these tiles are the most numerous and going to be the most tricky things to pick, with perhaps the exception of the slats holding up the roof. Okay, so with everything selected, what we can do is we can have everything else inherit the properties of that one selected item by holding down Control and pressing the L key. So we're going to make links to all of the other selected objects to the active selected. So if I go materials, okay, the whole thing's gone pink. I'm going to change that to something a little less offensive to my eyes because that was really bright. And now we've got everything sharing one material. And we can do the same if we came down to, let's say, these bricks down here. And then I will show you one final thing. So I'm going to highlight all of these bricks. And notice that the ground has also been selected, but nothing else has. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click the ground twice. Twice because I needed to select it once to make it the active selected, and then click it again to deselect it. I'm going to select, with the Shift key held down, one other brick. And we can see that's become the active item. Now from this, what I can do is I'm going to delete that pink slot and I'm going to introduce a new material called brick, and I'm going to immediately inherit it. So I'm going to go Control and L. So all of these darker orange ones are going to inherit the active selected material by Control and L, materials. Now they all share the brick. I can change them to any color I want.
Hey guys, Mark here with just a little update for you. I wanted to come in here and give you a little bit of a insight into collections here, because they can be used and be really helpful when you're selecting things in things like these. What you've got here is my scene. I've got a little bit of a difference with my terrain being a bit bumpy. What I'd like you to do is cast your eyes to the right of my screen in the outliner here, where you can see I've got my well in a collection. And what I've done differently to Mikey is I've got my tiles, my bricks, and all of my framework in separate collections underneath the collection. Now what I'd like to show you is, say we wanted to select all of the tiles in my scene. This is going to take a while doing it this way. What you can do is you can go to your tiles, right click, and you can select objects. And this will select everything underneath that collection. And there we have all our tiles selected. And you can do the same for the bricks. Make sure you have the brick selected, right click, and then select objects. and it will add to the selection as well, so you can add the bricks to the selection you already had with the tiles. Hope this helps, and now back to Mikey.
One final thing, if I wanted to select all of these that share the same material, I can simply go Shift and L and select material. So there we go, there's a really quick way that you can go ahead and select anything that shares the same material. And now it's a matter of going around the rest of your model and sorting that out, which is a perfect time for your challenge. Okay, so your challenge, a nice straightforward one. I'd like you to colour in your model and make at least 3 materials and apply them to your model. So it's not just one colour, it's going to be at least 3. If you have more on your model, that's absolutely fine as well. Pause the video and give that a go. Okay everybody, welcome back. Let's hop over now and colour in our model. Okay everybody, welcome back. Okay, so we're pretty far on at the moment. Couple of other things that I need to do. I need to do the tiles at some point and these wooden beams. So often it's easier to get this going from the word go with the correct materials, so that as I duplicated them they would have the materials attached to them. So that's a learning point from us moving on. So I've got the tiles here. I think I'm going to call this pink tiles. So I know that the tiles are now all sorted, and I can go in and make them darker or lighter or a different colour later on. It doesn't matter. Well, let's set it now. Let's set it to maybe a slate-like colour. Okay, I'm going to select the ground, delete the material slot that says tiles, new material, and it's going to be called ground. I'm going to make it a green for the moment, a darker green. Okay, so the next thing are these wooden beams. I'm going to go in and I should, if we look at it from the right angle, be able to just select the main beams. Excellent. So I'm going to delete and add in a new material. What should we call it? Let's call this beams, and then we'll call the other one slats. I don't know what the technical term is. So this is going to be a, oh, not a pink, a brown. So we're going to go about there, and I'm going to have it inherit all of these other ones. Now I've missed a couple of extra ones, so I'm going to select those, making sure that this top one is the last one that's selected. Go Control L and link in those materials. Perfect. Now the next one are these here. Now do these share the same? No, they're not linked duplicates. Okay, so I'm going to look at this straight on and then go up this way. I think that's going to be the easiest way of doing this. Now, one thing to bear in mind is whenever you're doing a big selection like this, I keep accidentally selecting this big one, so I'm just going to ignore it and remove it at the very end. So there's that. Now, I'm not going to attempt to do the other side at the moment. It's so easy for me to inadvertently select the other end. Oh, here we go. I've accidentally selected one there straight away. But it's very easy for me to accidentally select something and ruin my selection overall. So I'm going to keep it as it is there. I'm going to go into my materials slot. I don't have an active one selected at the moment. Let's make one of these active. There we go. Materials, delete that, add in a new material. I'm going to call it a slat. I'm not even sure how you spell slat. I think it's like that. Anyway, I'm sure one of you will correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm going to make this sort of a lighter yellow just so I can see the difference. And then Control and L, I'm going to inherit those material properties. And then if you wanted to, you could go down each one of these individually as well and add in slat. But I can't be bothered to do it like that, so I'm going to select all of these other ones. Plus it's a really inefficient way of doing it. And Control L, materials. Okay, so we've got all of our materials separated out here. I'm pretty happy with it, apart from this kind of pinky brick colour. So let's come in, make it a darker orange. It's almost like a terracotta well at this point. Should we have terracotta tiles instead? Let's call these terra tiles. And then what we should be able to do is select all of these with the same material. So Shift and L, material, there we go. I'm going to select one of these bricks down here, Control and L, and inherit the materials. There we go. So we've got a terracotta tile, and then I should be able to just switch this over to tiles. That's what I want. I'm going to highlight everything, deselect the ground, select this brick, and Control and L, link materials. Okay, so that looks to me a little bit better, and I can make this terracotta style tile a little bit redder and a little bit darker. Anyway, I could faff around now for the rest of the day just tweaking this, but it's not worth investing that much more time in this particular model. We've got a very basic well here. Does it work? Does it stand as it is? I'm happy with it. I wouldn't want to start adding more detail to it because it's just not necessary at this point in time. And that is something that you'll have to hold yourself back from. It's just going too far with your models sometimes. By all means, I'm not saying don't, but just be aware of the time you're investing in a single model where you could produce 5 or 6 different models and learn a lot more in the process. So there we go, there's my coloured in well. I'm looking forward to seeing whatever you've made all coloured in. And if yours hasn't been as complex as this one, that's okay. I probably have gone a bit overboard with the amount of objects in this scene. So I'm really happy with how mine's worked out. If I had 1 or 2 criticisms, I'd probably say that I've perhaps gotten a bit carried away with making mine. But if you've done that as well, you know, that's absolutely fine. If you're enjoying the process, just go with the flow. Now, we're not quite there yet, but we're almost to the point where we can start sharing our models. But we need to learn to render, and we need to learn to light our scene a little bit as well. And those will be in the next lectures. See you soon.